You know what else I don't like about that movie? Shrek pushing himself onto Fiona like that. The man, ogre, had a midlife crisis and got what he wanted. No kids, no wife, and all the people fearing him. He just changed it because he was going to die. I disagree, man. He obviously loved his wife and his kids, which is why at the end he was so happy to see them. Or he was just relieved to be alive. Dude, you're totally kidding. You're kidding, right? Fine, but I'm telling you, we can all agree that Shrek was the problem. I disagree. Excuse me, stranger? Care to explain your idiotic statement? Shrek wasn't having a midlife crisis, and it wasn't his fault. Not even mostly. It was Fiona's. But I guess that's a personal opinion. Before this video begins, I'd like to remind you all that this is, in fact, personal opinions, not just the channel name, but what's actually going on here. It's all good if you don't agree, and it's all good if you do agree. The whole point, though, is that this is just personal opinions. I'm not professional at all in any way, and this is obviously no slight against those who made this movie. Now, I'm sure that many people may disagree, and others may say about time, but I want to state one thing straight out. Both Shrek and Fiona are in fault in this movie. Just more Fiona than Shrek. This obviously doesn't make a character worth hating or even being the worst character ever created in the franchise, because neither of these characters are. I can't really honestly think of a person in this series that is as bad as the children from Encanto or the dog from Descendants. They fit their characters and have very funny moments.
Shrek! Fiona! Mom! Harold! Donkey!
I plan on going through this entire series, and I'm going to go through it backwards because what are you going to do about it? Stop it? No, you're not. Nerd. Get bullied. When we enter the movie, we see that Shrek and Fiona are living the same way every day for at least a year, and we see Shrek getting more and more upset. He doesn't have time to himself anymore. His home is now a tourist attraction, and he has people constantly invading his once space of forced isolation to a space now forced with constant movement. Donkey doesn't understand that Shrek doesn't want to see him every day because Donkey doesn't want to be alone. Puss in Boots here doesn't get it. I mean, right outside their window when Shrek and Fiona are trying to have an intimate moment together. During this time, you can see Shrek is getting more and more angst, and while it's completely understandable that Fiona doesn't see, because she's living her own life and trying to care for a house and triplets, but she is his partner and needs to be more attuned to him. Marriage is a partnership where you put your partners first before yourself. As my sister said, she's still a princess and has the power to stop this tourist attraction from coming to their house. She could see that he was trying to relax when he was going to the mud pit, and that he was tired of people constantly being around him. I dare say Shrek is an introvert who's used to standing up for himself, content with being alone for a bit before going back to hang out with everyone. His wife, who should know him best, should go out of the way to make sure he has time for himself and that he's able to relax. The outhouse can wait. Realistically, she and Shrek are the ones to use that, and obviously the babies are too young right now. I mean, why would Puss in Boots use the outhouse?
How dare you do the litter box on me?
As my sister pointed out as well, Fiona was born and taught for this life, while Shrek was born and taught that he was going to be alone forever. Not that he didn't want this life, but that this may be his dream life that he thought he could never get. He has a loving wife, beautiful children, and friends who genuinely care about him. He's taught himself that he needs to suck up his feelings and only express them in rage directed at something or someone else, like the villagers that used to constantly attack him. Now he has no place to express his anger. The villagers love him, he has friends with their own lives, and that invade his face constantly because they want to be around him, and he doesn't want to push away the only friends he and his children have, and that his wife is happy with. Then he's the bad guy if he does that against them all because they aren't meaning to be disrespectful or disregarding to his feelings. And he feels like he can't say something, which later shows he can't without upsetting his wife. Look, I'm aware that I don't and probably won't know these feelings personally, as these are feelings that are usually left on the men alone. They, the men, are usually the ones that are disregarded and their empowering moments become mundane and boring because they suddenly don't really matter, those moments, and sometimes the men themselves. The example here being that Shrek losing the fear from the people and becoming a central joke to them because he is quote-unquote no longer a real ogre.
And you used to be so fierce.
Yeah, when you were a real ogre.
A real ogre?
It's a depressing thing a lot of people, especially men, can face, and a lot of times it's explained away as a midlife crisis instead of a real problem. In the birthday party, we see a really good scene of overstimulation where the pigs are absolutely stupid, the dad and his kid are pushy to say the least, Donkey is being Donkey, and so on. Fiona did the right thing in this scene when getting him away from the pushy family, as it's being stealthy and the way of being helpful to Shrek so that he can take a graceful exit. This part, though...
You licked it! No! Just because you're an ogre doesn't mean you have to eat like one.
This part seems a bit speciesist in some way. After the roar, Fiona did the right thing and asked if Shrek was okay, and Shrek obviously made the understandable but still wrong reaction. The unfortunate conversation that followed is where Fiona kind of messed up, and in fact did mess up. She should have just listened and empathized. There's a moment to tell someone they messed up, and there's a moment to listen and empathize. There's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. This was a time for Fiona to listen. That was, by the way, Ecclesiastes 3, 1-8. Shrek has changed a lot. He isn't typically aggressive anymore, but more reserved. This is shown when the chair breaks and the people are constantly in his house, that he doesn't react aggressively. In fact, in the first movie, he constantly kicks people out physically from his house and yells at them. In this movie, he's learned that holding something in may be a better choice than being outright aggressive. Shrek needed this time to explain how he's feeling and to express everything that's been going on, but Fiona takes that away from him. As my sister said, she makes it all about herself. Shrek loves his family. He just wants to be respected and feared like he used to be. He wants the past benefits with the present gifts. He wants those things from the past still to matter, because they matter to him still. He wants a family and friends that he cares about and the rest of the world just to leave them all alone. He isn't a person who wants to be famous, but is forced to accept it and deal with it. And for the rest of the movie, this isn't a way to make people who have forgotten about you remember you. Kidnapping and physically forcing yourself to be around them isn't a way that works. You should know these people better to know the difference and go to the right people in your life. Come on, tell me you don't know at least one person in your life who would say, oh, you've forgotten about me and there's a different universe. And oh, okay, well, I believe you kind of, and that's the person you should go to, you know? Kidnapping just isn't the way, and I wish movies and TV shows would just learn that and stop trying to push the quote-unquote comedic thing. It's not very funny, it's just kind of cringeworthy at this point. Another thing I want to point out is Shrek is a runt. Look at the height difference. Look at the beef difference. He is straight up a runt of ogres. And I think that's so interesting that the movie did that and showed us that, because I never would have guessed it. And I think they say it straight up.
He's really tiny, isn't he?
Also, Fiona's a hot ogre. I didn't know the rest of these any of these ogres were female until I watched it again this year. No wonder Shrek's you're beautiful in the first movie. Yeah, she's hot compared to other ogres. Oh, and there's one more thing. The queen seems to have a thing for green. Okay, I don't really know what else to say about that. So, thank you so much for watching the video. Please like this video and subscribe to see more. This is personal opinions. Please comment yours. Tara, take it away. So, you come here often?
Okay. Everything does suck. Hello? You're outside?
Is Scott here?
You know what? He just left.